Welcome, everybody. Good evening, wherever you may be in India, and I hope you're doing well, keeping well. We're going to have a session for I'm going to show you a few slides. That shouldn't take long. It should be about 30, 40 minutes. And after that, I'll be more than happy to answer any question that you may have on this very important topic of innovation and how companies in India have reacted in the past 3 months. And we'll also have a look at, or at least I'm going to put forward a few suggestions in terms of what I think companies should be doing to emphasize on wanting to innovate at a time like this and why I think that's extremely important. So, before I begin, let me just give you a quick introduction of who I am. Some of you, I think, like I said earlier, I recognize a few names. So, I'm the founder and CEO of Ranzar Consulting. Ranzar Consulting is an innovation and strategy consulting firm, and our mission is to make innovation a repeatable, reliable, and a sustainable business function. So we work with a lot of companies, both in India as well as outside, and also with leaders in trying to help them build their companies' capabilities when it comes to innovation. We also do a fair bit of work around strategy. How I got into this? Well, for the past 23 years, from 1996 till the towards the end of 2019, I helped establish a very familiar brand in India. I worked in multiple roles during my tenure with the brand McDonald's. I worked in strategy, I worked in innovation, marketing, operations, just to name a few. I'm based out of Delhi, and the best way to reach me would be through my email ID. It's right up there on the screen, and also on LinkedIn, or you could go on to our Vanjar website, and you've got the link there as well. So, um, if you were to ask me how companies are viewing innovation till probably March of this year, I think I would have said that it's a problem of distribution because there were plenty of innovative ideas out there. There were plenty of technologies, business models out there. I think it was more a problem of distribution. So this quote by William Gibson, I think, captures the essence of what companies were facing when it came to innovation, at least in March of this year. And that was that the future is here already. It's just that it's not evenly distributed. But as we all kind of experienced, the world turned upside down since March. And I think the second quote is more accurate in terms of how companies are viewing this at the moment. And that is the thing that moves so fast that there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are literally weeks when decades happen. And I think the problem right now for companies is a problem of agility, is a problem of having to move fast in a world which is quite blind because they really don't know what's there. It's so difficult to say what's going to happen next week that I understand some of the concerns that companies may have when it comes to innovation, right? Um, if you were to look at the narratives in the media, whether it's on TV or whether it was in the news, what you would have heard companies say in March would have been that this is just a temporary setback and things will bounce back for sure. And there were a lot of echoes of something similar, at least in March and maybe early April. But as we went through the next few weeks, the narrative slowly started to change. So if you recall, in the month of April, it was all about how do we take care of our employees, because at that time in the media, there was a lot of talk about how companies are going to treat employees because of the fact that they simply don't know when they'll be able to get back their operations online again. So there was a lot of talk about being good employers and also a fair bit of optimism that we'll still bounce back in some way or the other. Towards the end of April, the conversation started to shift toward this is serious and we need to save cash at any cost, and we're not sure when things will go back to being normal. And it just started to slide into a more pessimistic narrative from there on. And so in the month of July, what we've seen is that companies have realized that there is no going back to normal, right? So things have changed and there is going to be a new normal of some sort. Now, I've had the opportunity to converse with a lot of executives in the past 3 months. And what really stood out for me was there was clearly, in the beginning at least, there was clearly two teams. One that believed that this is temporary and things will go back to being normal. And then there were the other who, even in the month of April, were saying that things will never go back to being normal and that we'll have to face a new reality. And like I said earlier, in the month of July, that tone has completely changed. Every business, every industry, and every sector is having to face the fact that there is going to be a new normal, and they'll have to reorient their business in a way so that they can optimize on that new normal. What we've seen is basically three things, and which are very symptomatic of what I'm going to talk about, and what I truly believe is holding companies back, especially in India, when it comes when it comes to a time like this. And so, what we've seen is that there's been a restriction of information. So, there's companies don't really want to focus on too much on what's happening out there. They have a fair bit of understanding of what's going on in the outside world, but they really want to focus on their internal operation, whether that is efficiency or whatever that may be. The second thing that I've seen happen is that there's been a constriction of control within the organization, right? So gone are the days when we had an open organization and every level of the organization was free to ideate. I think that has really gone out of the window in a way in the past 2 months, especially. There's been a constriction of control, and there's been a conservation of resources because companies have realized that they'll have to ride out the next few months, maybe years, and they'll have to go back and resource their initiatives in a way where they feel that it's going to be a safer bet for them. Now, these symptoms are not new. In fact, this response that we are seeing uh, from these people is actually a biological response in a way. Um, at times like this, there is a rigidity that sort of forms, and there is a revertal back to the core of what they've been good at in the past years and what they know how to do well. What we're also seeing is that some of these companies are still looking good, at least on paper at the moment. And that comes down to a concept known as legacy. Uh, what they've been doing in the past is simply giving them that the kind of momentum to ride out the next few weeks. But that's going to stop at some point in time. And we are absolutely clear about that. That's, if you look back at history, every crisis has had a new normal after that. It may not happen immediately after that, but for sure there is going to be a new normal. And now the question is, how do companies in India react to that new normal, and what is it that's going to give them the growth in the future? Um, there was one quote that I don't know how many of you are readers, but if you read this book, The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, there was this quote, there was this conversation between these two characters, and one of them asked the other, "How did you go bankrupt?" And he said, "Gradually and then suddenly." I think what we're seeing and what we've already seen in the past few weeks is a very gradual and then a sudden slide to the bottom. Just a few weeks ago, in fact, there was a research which was done, and it found out that companies are deprioritizing innovation to concentrate on four things. The first being shoring up their core. The second being that if they have to go after the opportunity areas, it's only going to be the known opportunity area. So, in other words, playing it safe. The third thing, like I mentioned earlier, is the need that they feel that they need to save cash. And the fourth thing, and I'm sure if we sort of introspect within our own organization, we'll see that there's a fair bit of wait and watch to see what's going to happen next. And so there's a need to kind of minimize on the risk. The two activities that have seen an uptick over the past few months has been the need to increase efficiency and also a need to relook their organization health, right? And all this has come at the cost of innovation. So, but like I said earlier, if history is any guide, times like this also give us plenty of opportunities. And it's times like this that leaders have to look at the future not through a single lens telescope, but through a variety of lenses. So they have to consider and they have to imagine multiple futures. Uh, the opportunity at times like this comes in three ways. There is a fair bit of there's a kind of introduction of new resources. There is a combination of existing resources, and there is a novel customer demand that comes at times like this. So even from what we've seen in the past 3-4 weeks, there there has been an introduction of new resources in into the market, whether it's by way of real estate, whether it's by way of talent, or even with if that's by way of extra capacity in the factories and in that sector. We've also seen a fair bit of combination of existing resources. So, for example, grocery has really picked up in a way that we could not have imagined. And a few slides from now, I'll be also showing you some legacy industries and companies who sort of latched onto this bandwagon of internet, and they've sort of evolved their complete business model. And we have also started to consume differently. So what we're asking is also very different to what we were asking about 3-4 months back. So there's an increased emphasis on things like health and sanitation. There's a increased consumption at home, and of course, work from home opens up a whole new set of activities for companies to kind of focus on. Um, so what we've seen, like I said earlier, the kind of reaction that we've seen in India, especially, is I wouldn't say it is surprising. There have been green shoots as well when it comes to companies wanting to innovate, right? So how do we try and overcome these barriers, right? So the first thing that I like to say is that companies are definite. There are at least some companies who are doing it, right? So it is possible. Just a few examples from the recent past, right? So just a few days ago, there was this article in the media about Royal Enfield and how they started a mobile service platform, right? And this was because their customers were not able or were not willing to come down to their service centers to get their vehicles kind of serviced and maintained. So again, it's nothing new. It could have been done a long time ago. Maybe they were already thinking of it in some way or the other before, but this just gave them the right opportunity to introduce this business model into the market. We've also seen many other examples. Mahindra actually repurposed one of their existing vehicles for the purpose of using them as ambulances, right? And this, I believe, was done in Bombay. So again, like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be new. There was also plenty of examples from across the world. So companies for example, Ferrari, are not known for anything apart from their cars, getting into low cost ventilators, right? And but the best one that I think epitomizes how companies should be thinking during times like this is a company called Starbucks. I'm sure all of you already consume that on a daily basis. But what they did was they introduced a concept of drive-throughs. So customers did not necessarily have to come into their restaurants to order and sit. They could simply drive up into their restaurant or a part of their restaurant, order their coffee, and go away. This was tested out in one of their Starbucks locations in North India, and I believe they found it successful enough as a test to scale it to other parts of the country. Right. So the first thing before we even get into how companies should be reacting to the situation is the fact that there are companies doing it already, and there's much to learn from how they are doing it and why they are doing it. Right. Um, this concept that I spoke about earlier, rigidity. Like I said earlier, it is a biological response, but it's something that is also it is something that can also be applied to organizations, and it has been applied to organizations in the past. You know, the best way to get the best way to get. I'm getting a chat message. Let me see if my audio is clear. Awesome, great, yeah. So I just want to point to you this picture on the top left. So in ships of old, there used to be this mast, and there used to be a small post on top of that mast where you'd probably find one of the junior most sailors having to climb up and keep a watch. And the whole purpose of this lookout tower was to warn the ship's captain of any danger which could not be seen from the deck of the ship or from the bridge of the ship. Right. I think this concept has translated well into organization structure and hierarchy. And we are starting to see a concept known as co-CEO, or at least a co-COO role. In fact, even in India, we're seeing a fair bit of designation. If you were to go on to LinkedIn, you will see roles such as chief entrepreneur. And I think that's extremely important. It doesn't have to be at that senior level. Of course, it can just be a small team of maybe 2 to 3 people who've been just tasked to look up while the rest of the team looks down, right? But I think this is extremely important for companies to create a lookout, right? So in a way that allows them plenty of focus on their existing business and trying to dig themselves out of this situation, but also ensure that they don't miss out on the larger trends which are shaping and which are very rapidly shaping the new normal. The other way that I found companies in India, and I've got two examples here, and one is not necessarily from India, but applicable for India as well, is a concept called micro pivots. Now, these are just small moves that a company can make, maybe just minor tweaks in their existing model. And we've got some fantastic examples. In fact, we've got this Ambience Mall here in Delhi. Legacy sector, you wouldn't necessarily associate malls with innovation. But what they've done is, because of the fact that people are not visiting malls anymore, what they've done is a scan, order, and pay. Right, so they've got an app. You can just go. You've got all the listings over there. Just scan, order, and pay on the app, and then you can drive down to the mall. You don't have to enter the mall. They will designate a time for you to reach there, and they'll be outside, and they'll hand over whatever you order. Right, again, a fantastic use of existing resources, and but in a larger way, what these small actions do is they tend to keep the machinery running within the organization. I think one of the challenges that companies in India and elsewhere in the world have had with these lockdowns has been that when once they've had to restart, they found that there's been a fair bit of uh, really required a lot of effort to restart their organization, right? So when you're making the micro changes and micro moves, what it allows you to do is at least keep the organization's gears running. What it also allows you is to continue with at least some form of cash flows. Because again, what we've seen is that companies are not only focusing on the cash flow that they have, but it comes at the cost of growth opportunities, right? So if you're making these micro moves, it really allows you at least a little bit of cash flow to flow through the organization, right? And the third most important way that it also helps companies is that it gives them a better idea of what the future may look like, right? So you can put it down to just experimentation, but what these micro moves do is that they give the company a better view of what's out there at times like this. And especially now that we are seeing changing habits, we are seeing new models being introduced into the market. So these moves can help an organization by just giving them an idea of what's being done out there. In fact, Zoom, when it started, in even in the month of April, when we all started to really use Zoom for both work and for school, they did not have this feature which was focused especially on education. But just recently, they realized that the most amount or the maximum uptake in the usage of Zoom has been by schools, right? So what they've done is, again, didn't I'm sure did not need much of work at their end, but all they've done is that they've offered a education suite to their existing suites of services. So again, extremely important for companies to be doing these small things and also creating a lookout, creating a structure within their organization so they are able to look out and keep a watch on what's growing and how the market is evolving and changing. But before we even start to talk about innovation, there's a pink elephant in the room that we all must sort of address. And that is that there's a branding problem when it comes to innovation. In 2006, Apple introduced a campaign of ads called Get a Mac. Right, so I don't know how many of you have had the chance to look that up on YouTube. It was not there in India, of course. But what they did was that they pitched the Mac, which I had a younger, trendier, snazzier version of the PC. Right. So if you look at this image on the left, what you'll see is that the more sober, formal-looking guy is the PC, and the younger, snazzier jeans, t-shirt, hoodie type of guy is the Mac. Right. And so they wanted to sell this they wanted to sell this image of the Mac as being a sort of younger, trendier version of the Mac of the PC, right? And I think at the core of it, innovation has this issue, because when you talk to senior executives, especially in India, what you realize is that they tend to treat innovation as that shiny new object. It's not something that they completely probably understand, and so they chalk that up to something that the millennials or the younger generation is doing, right? But at the heart of it, innovation is just as rigorous a process, or just as rigorous a function as marketing is, or as finance is, right? So I think that's a problem that we have to address, because unless we understand what it really means to be innovative, I think we are not getting anywhere. And the other thing that I'm sure you would also have realized is that innovation is equated in a way to invention. Invention is not equal to innovation. Invention plus a superior business model definitely is innovation, but it doesn't stop at only invention, right? So a good way for companies to address this is for them to define what it really means for them as a company to innovate, right? So what you're doing is you are trying to set the four walls within which your company is going to innovate. So you are going to define the what, the where, the how, the where, the when. So all of these things have to be defined very clearly, and it has to be a subset of your larger corporate strategy, right? A great example of how that's done is, of course, Google, right? And there's an example over here. You can look that up on the web. There are plenty of other great examples. Amazon has a great sort of framework for innovation, and a part of that comes out in the annual letter that Jeff Bezos shares with the shareholder every year. So it's extremely important for companies to define what it means for them to innovate, and define the how, where, and when, and why they are going to innovate. So there's been a lot of talk about open innovation, and wanting to work with startups, right? But it cannot be a one-off thing. There has to be a very clear, consistent strategy to how you as a company should be innovating, right? So a fair bit of time needs to be spent doing that. It's only when you have a defined strategy when it comes to innovation can you actually get over this problem of branding of innovation. And I'm sure we've all in some way or the other faced this in our organization when we go up to our executives and say that I've got a great idea, and or even for that matter that in terms of an innovative idea, this is what we should be doing. This is a serious problem, and I see this acutely in India with the senior executives that I speak to, right? The other thing that's important for us to realize is that innovation is never an idea problem. Oops, I seem to have, yeah. Innovation is never an idea problem. Um, it is never for the lack of ideas that companies don't innovate. It is always an idea execution problem. It is always about what you as a company do with an idea, right? So there is this famous formula of which says that ideation is a function of knowledge, is a function of uh, imagination, and is a function of your ability to evaluate that idea. But there's a small A over there if you look at it, and that A stands for your company's attitude to ideation. And that's extremely important. So while as individual employees, we can have the knowledge, imagination, and we can have a fair bit of understanding of how to kind of evaluate that idea in the context of our organization. I think the attitude bit of it has to flow down from the organization, right? So what is the culture of ideation? What is the culture of innovation that the company or you as an organization give to your employee base? And how do you encourage them to not just come up with ideas, but also take those ideas forward, right? A lot of companies I've seen in India have started to use ideation tools, right? They can be online. A great example of that is, for example, Adobe's Redbox, right? And there are many variations of that. Oracle has its own tool, and some great tools are just available off the shelf. Uh, but I would be hesitant to just do that and not do anything else with the ideas, because if you only do that and you don't do anything else, then what you're doing is basically theater. It's not giving you any value. You're not extracting any kind of value from those ideas. Ideas also don't need to be new. In fact, a lot of the ideation that we've seen over the past few weeks has been a combination or a recombination of existing ideas, right? And the best example of that, and it's not in the past few weeks, but the best example of that is Amazon. Um, Amazon doesn't has not offered anything new. All they've done is they've combined a legacy business of selling books, at least when they start, with a new technology at that time, internet, right? And so that's how it all started. So ideation doesn't have to be new. You don't only have to go after new ideas. You have to constantly be scanning the environment and seeing how I can combine ideas and how I can combine platforms. Um, but it's extremely important, like I said, for an organization to know what to do with an idea, right? So what are the structures that you have in place that when an employee has an idea, what do you do with that idea? How do you take that idea forward? So what you grow in your garden of innovation. And I love this cartoon here on the left. So you've got this lady with an idea with a red sort of fruit, and you've got all these other weeds in the organization who are ready to cut her down to size, right? So it's extremely important for an organization to create that culture where ideas thrive and where people are motivated to take those ideas forward. A lot of ideas get killed in our own heads as employees, because we know that if we were to speak about them with anybody, they will most probably be shot down, right? So don't make your company a graveyard for ideas. Having said that, uh, there are some great examples of how companies deal with ideas that don't make it. So a great example of that is, and I think this is a website, it's called Killed by Google, right? So these are all the ideas that did not pass muster, but they sort of just listed it and they sort of just documented, and they've kept it absolutely open for anybody to have a look at. And even if they want to copy it more, they're absolutely kind of welcome to do that. And and the third thing is that, there's a lot of talk about failing fast, and that's great. I mean, when you in any in any form of innovation, there is definitely going to be failure. But I get concerned when when I hear about failure being okay. It's not okay to fail. Let's be absolutely real about that. What you really want to be doing is learning, right? So your experimentation has to be based on wanting to learn, in wanting to close the gap between your knowledge or what you know as a fact and what you assume, right? A lot of ideation starts off with just assuming that this is what the market needs or this is what the market wants, right? So your job is going to be to close the gap between that idea or just that kind of assumption and turning that into a fact, right? So I'm sure by now you are all well versed with this build, measure, learn loop, right? It's a part of the lean management framework. Um, but let's not stop there. I mean, let's look at some examples, and especially from India, about how that's been done. So there's this great company. It's a DTC brand, and it's a company called March D. I won't be surprised if you've not heard of them. They're an Instagram heavy or probably an Instagram only brand, right? And as the name suggests, they're into making T-shirts, or that's what they were doing till maybe a few weeks back when they decided that the market for masks was big enough for them to go after, right? So what you would normally find them doing is just sort of making a few and testing it out and see how many sell of what type, and and then once they found that data, once they've got that data, then they'll go after that and try and exploit that. But what they did was completely different. So what they did was they didn't make a single mask, right? What they did was, on their website they said very clearly that this is the idea we have. We are going to offer it in packs of 2, packs of 5, and packs of 10, right? And they didn't ask that, would you want it? They said, pay us and we'll make it for you, right? So, and they've got a great amount of traction, not just in terms of the orders, as you can see over here. All their uh, pack sizes, except for the pack size of 5, have has been sold out already. But it's just a great validation from the market of this idea being something that they should be kind of focusing on for the future, right? So just some great examples. Now, all of that is good, but I'm sure some of you must be asking, what can I do as an Indian, as an individual? I mean, all of us don't necessarily have the word innovation in our titles, right? Um, but you definitely can make a difference no matter where you are in that organization, no matter whether you're in the finance function or whether you're in the marketing function or whether you're in any other function. You can make a difference. It all comes down to building your innovation capital, right? And what that basically comes down to is four things: who you are, your innovation specific capital, what you know about innovation, how much, how well versed you are with the area of innovation, who you know, your innovation specific social capital, what you did in the past, so your reputation capital specifically on innovation. And then the fourth thing is what you do every day, right? So while the who you are part and the what you did part is built over time for sure, the who you know part and what you do now is definitely something that we can all start doing from now. And the fact that some of y'all have signed up for this conference is, I think, a great way for you to build your innovation specific social capital, right? Where you get to rub shoulders, at least virtually, with some of the top minds in the area of strategy and innovation, right? But it's the what you do part, the impression amplifiers, that I just want to take a second and talk about, right? So when you have an idea, what do you do with an idea? And like I said, ideas can come from any level of the organization. Most likely, they come from people who have got nothing to do with the function of innovation, right? I've experienced that myself. So you have to be extremely willing to give a free rein to your employee base for them to ideate. But what can you do as an individual if you have an idea, or if you're trying to push an idea through your organization? You can do any one of these six things, and these have been proven. In fact, there's a great article on MIT Sloan, which I will post in the India page. So if you ever get the opportunity, please go and have a look at this page, have a look at this article. Right. So these are the six very simple things you can do. You can compare. You can find the right. You can find the right example, or you can find the right analogy to convince your kind of supporters of your idea. It's very critical for you to build a early base of supporters. Um, these can be people that you are well versed with, that you interact with daily. Don't necessarily have to be very senior folks, but people who can talk for you. That's extremely important. You can materialize, and you should materialize in some way or the other. You must make your idea tangible, visible, and real. If you are talking about a website, or if you're talking about for example, an Amazon, if they want, and this mask example that we just saw is a great way of doing it. It's a very low cost way of doing it, but it's a very tangible, visible, and real way of putting your idea out there. Right. The other thing that's extremely important, and this is not just limited to the area of innovation. I think I think this point is extremely telling. It's extremely compelling for leaders to understand how to tell great stories with their ideas, right? And so you have to be able to craft a narrative, a reason for people to listen to you. Other small thing that you can do is signaling, right? So if you can join up with a group that can confer any type of legitimacy to your idea, that's great, right? So and this is a point where you have a lot of companies wanting to work with accelerators, external accelerators or external incubators, because that gives them a sort of credibility to the ideas that they have. What you can also do is apply social pressure by introducing a sense of scarcity, and I'm sure we've all done that at some point of time or the other when we've told our managers that, if you don't do this, I mean, this is the only time we have to do it, and look at them, they're already doing it. So we've all been doing some form, or in some way any one of these things. But I think it's extremely important, like I said, that it's you need to be able to build your capital when it comes to innovation, and it's true for everybody within that organization, and it's a responsibility that I think employees at all levels have. There's only so much that you can ask your organization to do, and I admit that there's a lot for organizations to do to be able to create that culture of innovation. But I think as employees and as individuals, it's also up to us on how we want to build that capital for ourselves, right? And this is the last slide I have, and I just want to leave you with this thought. It's not a failure of innovation that kills companies. If that was the case, then the Fire Phone would have killed Amazon. The Google Glass would have killed Google. That's not the case. The failure to innovate is what kills companies, and the failure to innovate in times of crisis is what really kills companies. So if you want a sure, short way of sliding to oblivion, don't innovate. Thanks. So I'm open to questions. If you want to ask me a question, please just unmute yourself and ask away.
Um, Hi, Pavanjit. This is Pavan from Siemens.
Hi,
Um,
Pawan.
Hi. There was this question which I had posted. You talked about Starbucks coming up with the drive-through idea, right? But the idea was the drive-through philosophy is something which has been adopted by many fast food joints. So it's that only during this pandemic situation where they probably would have found out that it's a survival topic, they came up with the idea of also implementing drive-through, right?
Yeah.
So the question was, what is it that was really hindering them that they didn't really adopt this philosophy of drive-through in the past?
Mhm.
Yeah. Today it is a question of survival. Hence, they had to adopt it. So ideally, that was the main trigger for them to adopt it. But then they never thought it as an option before, as many of the other organizations are already doing it. What do you think?
Correct.
What was it that really made them not to adopt
Push
this in
them.
the past? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The concept of drive-through has been around, in fact, since 1948. McDonald's coincidentally wasn't the first food brand to introduce a concept. McDonald's actually made the concept famous. But the brand that really introduced drive-throughs to the world was a brand called Wendy's. So they have a couple of restaurants in India, but they are the one that introduced. But you're absolutely right. Um, Starbucks, and I'm not sure of their thinking on this, but yeah, times like this give companies or they force companies to relook some of their strategies. So I'm sure they would have had that discussion somewhere in India that, maybe a few months back, before March, that drive-throughs isn't something that Starbucks wants to be a part of at this point in time because, remember, for Starbucks, the restaurant experience is extremely important. But once that restaurant experience was not a possibility given the lockdowns, that's when they had to ideate. And just a point over here, this drive-through of Starbucks is not the first time that they've done that in India or the first time that they've done that anywhere in the world. Starbucks has a fair amount of drive-through that they operate in other parts of the world, right? So it was a model that they were already well versed with. It's just that for India, maybe they thought that it's at this point in time, and I'm talking before March, it's probably more important for them to build themselves up as a destination brand rather than get into stuff like drive-throughs, deliveries, and so on and so forth. But yeah, you're absolutely right. At times like this, when you've had all your other avenues closed off, you have to go back to the drawing board and you have to relook some of your um, previous decisions. And I'm sure that's what they
Mhm.
did, and they said that this is the best that we can do right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And the second thing would be, I mean, we are talking about innovation attitude or innovation culture, right? First of all, what drives the organization? What is it? What does it takes to create an innovation culture within the organization, right? And what is the right approach or the best approach to really create that culture within the organization? Your
Great
views on
question.
that?
Great question. So you know the best way that I look at it, and I've also heard a lot of other folks say the same thing. Uh, if I want to test if a company or if a leader is serious about innovation within their organization, I simply ask to have a look at their calendar for the past 1 month and see how much time they've actually spent on the topic of innovation, right? How much time they spent on growth opportunities, discussing
Hmm.
growth, and discussing some of their existing strategies. And the reality is that not a lot of time is spent doing that. A lot of time, in fact, most of the senior executives' time is spent on a daily basis in fighting fires, right? And that's reality, of course. I mean, you need to run a business at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
how much time you actually devote to something as abstract as innovation is very less. Right, so that's the first page that I start of how committed a senior leader is. And by senior leader, I don't necessarily only mean the chief executive officer or the COO. It can just be the line manager. How committed they are to the function of innovation. That's one. What good companies have done when it comes to creating the culture of innovation within their organization. Again, like I said, ideas are free, and every employee in every company in every country of the world has got ideas. Any human being will have ideas. That's what makes us different from any other animal. But the fact of the matter is, how do you take those ideas forward, right? And how do you actually give wheels to those ideas to actually turn that into a viable business opportunity for you in the future? That's where I think a lot of companies fail, right? A start, or at least a place for companies to start by doing or for doing that, is to institutionalize innovation within their organization structure, right? So if you're looking at your own organization, do you see a role of, doesn't have to be the chief innovation officer, can just be an innovation function probably tagged on to an existing function. Usually it goes along with marketing or with strategy, right? But does the word innovation explicitly appear on your organization structure? Because it's extremely important for companies to institutionalize it, right? If you don't institutionalize it, and I'm sure you would have heard this saying, and to some extent it is absolutely true. Innovation is everybody's job, right? But the buck stops with someone, and that buck has to stop with somebody who has been instituted with the responsibility and the accountability of getting innovation as a culture into that organization. So some of the great companies, especially in India, if you talk about the great companies who are good at innovation, I gave you a few examples. Royal Enfield has managed to turn itself around in the past few years simply because they focused on innovation, right? And you see that in the quality of their bikes, you see that in the quality of their ads, you see it in many other ways, right? You also see that in the reliability of their vehicles, right?
Mhm.
So they've done a lot of work on that. You see companies like Tata who've institutionalized innovation within their organization structure, right? So these are telltale signs of a company being serious about innovation. So the only other thing that probably I just like to tag on to that is, and this is a point that we already spoke about. Ask yourself, if you had an idea, and I don't necessarily mean that for your organization, but just imagine yourself in any organization in India. If you had an idea, who would you go to with that idea? Right. So employees need to have those avenues very clearly defined. Is there a kind of governance council that meets maybe once a month that listens to all these ideas? So that's extremely important. So employees have ideas, but where do they go with those ideas? Do they go up to the line managers? And if they go up to those line managers, are those line managers sensitized in a way that they actually listen to those ideas, right? And when they listen to those ideas, do they have the structure in place, and are they supported enough to either take that idea forward, or at least in some way or the other give feedback to that employee that this is what they need to do to be able to improve that idea, right? So all of that, so these are the structure that I'm talking about that companies need to have in place. Any other questions? I see somebody typing on the chat.
Pavanjit, this is Hiren Bankar. Can you hear me?
I hear it. Yes, I
Yeah.
can. Please.
So my question is more on a implementation part. So I would
Mhm.
say any innovation topic, if we implement, normally it takes some time, couple of months or couple of years. And by that time we are near to result, or if we achieve result, there is a possibility that the complete environment or expectation will change. So
Mhm.
in this dynamic situation, what would be our approach toward the any innovation topic?
All right. Again, I think that's a great question. And you're absolutely right. When you are in the field of innovation, there's always a worry that what you're working on may be irrelevant by the time it actually comes time to actually implement
Yeah,
that
correct.
and to scale that up. Uh, but there are ways to take care of that. So in any innovation portfolio that a company kind of manages, and it's never one single initiative. It's always a portfolio of initiatives that you must be managing. There are always going to be buckets of ideas or buckets of initiatives, and they are typically bucketed in three different buckets. One which is closer to the core, right? So what is it that you can implement, or what is it that you can innovate around the core, what you have right now? Those typically tend to be efficiency driven, right? So improving the efficiency, improving the taste of something that you sell, improving the speed to market for that specific offering. So that's one. The second bit of it is what's called the adjacent space, right? So you don't necessarily you are not necessarily in that space right now, but that's a natural way for your brand or your company to, or that's a natural space for you to innovate on. The last of it, the last bucket is really the wild ideas, right? What are also called the moonshots, right? Which may not necessarily make any sense to you right now, but it's important for you to keep a track of how they are moving and how they are evolving. Uh, so that's typically how it's done. There's a great framework that you can use for doing that. It's called the McKinsey's Three Horizons framework. And I've seen variations of that in different companies, right? But as a base, I think that's a great way to do it, where you sort of bucket your portfolio of initiatives into these three time horizons, or what you'll be doing in the next 1 year, what you'll be doing in the next 1 or 2 years, and what you'll be doing 2 years out. So that's a great way of doing it, and that just also helps to answer the worry that you said. Uh, when do you actually introduce, or when do you scale those ideas? You would only be able to scale those ideas when you've been doing some work on them and they are at a stage where you can introduce them into the market or embed them into your existing organization, right? But that work has to happen now, right? So you need to be able to work backwards. So a great way that I've seen somebody doing this is Facebook, right? And you would normally not imagine Facebook using McKinsey framework, but that's actually how they do it, where they've bucketed their initiatives in this way. And this was about 8 years ago, where Mark Zuckerberg, in one of the annual talks that he gives to the employees of Facebook, actually showed this slide up, and he said, stuff like artificial intelligence, we may not know too much about it right now, but it's something that it's going to be extremely important for us to monitor how it evolves. Right, so he had put that into the transformation bucket, the moonshots bucket. And
Okay.
just a year or so from the time that he showed that, Facebook actually acquired a company called Oculus, if you remember, right? And they started to build on that artificial intelligence thing. So it's important to pull these ideas into your known universe from now.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Um, uh, this is Pawan here, Pawajit. There is it happens many a times that your ideas are too forward looking, right? And probably this is something which would be a future requirement which will come up after 2 years, 3 years, or maybe 4 years down the line. But then today there is no business case to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably you do not also have a customer to it for such
Right.
an idea. How do you try to prototype such kind of ideas, and how do you really try to explore such ideations?
Great. No, you're absolutely right. Standing where we are at the moment in the year 2020, we don't necessarily know how, for example, artificial intelligence is going to impact uh, restaurant business. But the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is that if it's a trend, then we need to be able to at least at the minimum monitor that trend and enter into that trend when we feel it's reached a certain stage of maturity, right? Uh, but really, what it comes down to is developing your company's innovation strategy, right? Because more than anything, that strategy document doesn't necessarily have to be a document, but just your strategy defines not just what you do, but more importantly, what you should not be wasting your time doing, right? So if you have a clearly defined innovation strategy, it's going to save you a lot of time by not making you chase after things which you know or which your company isn't really wanting to focus on, right? I'm not necessarily saying that's the right thing, or they may not, but at least that document, that strategy defines what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be wasting your time on. I think that's a great start.
So as you rightly suggested, the focus should be probably starting with the core and then trying to expand it further. How your basic core business should not be affected, and you should ideally try to expand it around the core so that the
Yeah,
ideas can support the core as well as bring in more revenues of the business.
no, absolutely. So what I'd start off by doing if I was in an organization is that I would be looking at the complete list of initiatives, everything that they are working on, right? And I would bucket them into these three phases of what we are going to be going after, which is closer to the core. And like I said, they tend to be more efficiency sort of driven initiatives. What we are going to be doing after maybe the next 1 year, and what we kind of don't know anything about right now, but we have a sense that they probably could be important for us in the future, right? So if, and I go back to the restaurant business because that's the one that I'm most kind of familiar with, right? But if I'm looking at artificial intelligence, right, I know somewhere down the line, at some point in time in the future, in the hazy future, it is going to be important, because remember, it's not just that one technology that is going to sort of change the complete environment for me. As consumers become more adept at technologies and business models that are using artificial intelligence, they sort of develop that habit for it. Then, if you as a brand are not offering that in some way or the other, you tend to stand out for the wrong reasons, right? And in fact, just to go back to the example of McDonald's, many years ago, there was this conversation that we had internally of how we are going to get in artificial intelligence. We know it's important at some point in time in the future, like I said. Just a few years ago, we introduced this concept of self-ordering kiosks. Right, so if you're down in the
Hmm.
south and west of India, I'm sure if you went down to a McDonald's, you would see it. Now, the suggestions that that gives you is based on your past experience or currently what's the hottest selling burger or item in the restaurant. So there's a fair bit of artificial intelligence which has been built into that system. About 2 years ago, McDonald's also acquired artificial intelligence startup based out of Israel. Right. So as you get closer to the future, the haziness starts to go away from some of these ideas. But from where you are at this point in time, it's extremely important for you to be able to monitor that trend. You don't have to actively engage with it at this point in time necessarily, but you must at least be knowing what's happening with that. So for example, artificial intelligence only, if it's something that you feel can have an impact on your company and the way you do things at the moment, it's at least important for you to monitor what's happening in the field of artificial intelligence. What are the new applications that artificial intelligence is being used for? And then as you get closer to the future, or at least your sense of the future from where you are at this point in time, it will just become more clearer to you on how you can use that.
Okay.
Right, so I see this question on how do you, what are the metrics that you should be using for new ideas? Uh, Again, a great question. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make as managers is that we tend to apply metrics that don't really make or that don't really give justice to an idea, right? You cannot have an ROI for an innovative idea. You cannot have an ROI for an idea which your company or your organization is not used to at this point in time. Right? There's a whole field of innovation accounting, and in fact, as part of the unconference, Dan Toma is going to be having a separate session for that. So for the people who signed up for this, I will encourage you to have a look at that. He's done a lot of work in that field. uh, there's a whole set of metrics that you can use for innovation specifically. The the kind of metrics that we are used to, the ROI and the ROCA and the ROI, all of these things, they are great for things that are tangible, for things that have got a little bit of history, so we know and we can apply these kind of metrics. But for ideas which are absolutely new to your organization, these metrics don't work, right? So, but there's a different set of metrics that you can use. One, for example, is called the learning metric, right? So, like I said earlier, when you are working with new ideas, what you are basically trying to close the gap on is the gap between your knowledge or what's fact and the kind of assumptions that you make initially. Right. So the sooner you close that gap, the better it will be. So these are some of the metrics that you can apply. It definitely does not make sense to apply an ROI to a new idea. Great. So let me just have a quick check on the time. We are at 7:30 almost. So great. If there are no more questions, and you're always free to reach out to me on my email ID, on LinkedIn, or on any other medium, even through the platform of Innovators. I'll be more than happy to engage with you further and to answer any other questions that you may have. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you found the session useful, and please take care and be safe. Thank you.